We hear it all the time, don't we? Chase happiness, find your joy. It's kind of pushed as the main goal in life.
It really is. It's everywhere.
Yeah.
Self-help, social media.
Exactly. But what if, for some people, actually feeling happy, what if that brings up negative stuff, like fear or anxiety?
It sounds counterintuitive,
All right.
but it's a real phenomenon.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something called aversion to happiness. You could also call it, well, fear of happiness.
Right, and we're drawing on this source, aversion to happiness, to try and understand it better.
Yeah, figure out why someone might actually, shy away from feeling good.
And it's important to say this isn't like a formal mental health diagnosis in the books,
No, not a disorder as such.
but it describes this experience where people feel negative emotions could be fear, anxiety, even guilt when they are happy or when they show it
Okay, so it's tied to beliefs.
deeply. It seems to stem from a core belief that happiness somehow leads to bad outcomes. It's not just pessimism, it's more specific than that.
Right, like happiness itself is the trigger for something negative down the line.
Exactly. And the research digs into some specific reasons why people might feel this way.
Okay, let's get into those. One that really jumped out at me was this idea that being happy is basically asking for trouble.
Setting yourself up for a fall.
Yeah. The source mentioned that in both Western and Eastern cultures, you find this idea that bad things, unhappiness, suffering, even death tend to happen to people who are, well, too happy.
It's like a belief in some kind of cosmic balancing act, isn't it?
Totally, like you've used up your quota of good luck.
Right. Or that intense joy must be followed by intense sorrow to balance things out.
So that's one reason. What else?
Yeah. Another belief is that happiness might actually make you a worse person.
How so? Like
Yeah.
morally worse.
Yeah, perhaps seen as selfish or maybe less serious, less attentive to important things if you're too focused on being happy.
Interesting. Okay.
Then there's the idea that even just expressing happiness is bad, either for yourself, maybe attracting envy, or that bad luck we mentioned.
Right. Don't flaunt it.
Or bad for others, perhaps making them feel bad by comparison, or maybe it's just considered inappropriate in certain contexts.
Okay, that makes sense in some social situations. And the last one.
The last one is the belief that actively pursuing happiness is bad, that the chase itself is somehow wrong or detrimental.
Wow. Okay. That really flies in the face of so much modern advice, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
It suggests that for some, the whole quest for happiness feels inherently problematic.
So those are the core beliefs. Did the research link this aversion to any, like, psychological traits?
Yes, quite a few interesting connections came up. One is an association with what they call fragility of happiness beliefs,
Fragility, meaning.
meaning you see happiness as something very unstable, easily broken, quick to disappear.
Ah, so if you believe it's fragile, you might avoid getting too attached to it, like a defense mechanism.
Precisely. Why invest in something you expect to shatter any minute? It protects you from the anticipated pain of loss.
That makes a certain kind of sense. What else?
It's also linked to attachment style specifically, avoidant and anxious attachment.
Okay, how does that connect?
Well, if you have difficulty feeling secure in relationships, maybe that insecurity extends to positive emotions too. They might feel unfamiliar, unreliable, or even unsafe somehow.
Interesting. The feeling itself feels precarious.
And there's more. The research also found positive associations with perfectionistic tendencies.
Perfectionism, how does that fit?
Maybe the pressure to maintain a perfect state of happiness is overwhelming. Or perhaps any deviation from constant positivity feels like failure, making happiness itself stressful.
Yeah, I could see that, the pressure to keep it up.
Also linked to loneliness.
Loneliness, yeah, okay. Maybe feeling disconnected makes positive feelings seem out of reach or undeserved.
That could be part of it.
Yeah?
And significantly, a childhood perceived as unhappy was also associated with higher aversion to happiness later on.
Right. If happiness wasn't the norm early on, it might feel alien or uncomfortable as an adult.
Exactly. Unfamiliar territory. There was also a slightly unexpected link to belief in paranormal phenomena.
Really? Paranormal, like ghosts and stuff.
Sort of, yeah. The idea might be that if you believe in unseen forces or fate, maybe intense happiness feels like tempting fate or making yourself vulnerable to those forces.
Huh. Never would have connected those.
It's speculative, but it points to a worldview where things feel less under personal control, perhaps making strong, positive states feel riskier.
Okay. And one more link you mentioned earlier.
Right, holding a more collectivistic understanding of happiness, so prioritizing group harmony over individual joy, perhaps.
Ah, Tying back to not wanting to express happiness if it disrupts the group.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
And underpinning some of this, the study also found that high perfectionism combined with low self-esteem and low meaning in life contributes to this fear.
So it paints a picture of maybe feeling unworthy of happiness or unsafe in it.
I think that's a good way to put it. A sense of insecurity about oneself, about the stability of positive feelings, about the world, seems to be a common thread. The aversion acts almost like a shield.
Okay, this is already fascinating, but then it gets even more complex when you bring in culture, right?
Absolutely. This isn't felt the same way everywhere. The research really highlights significant cultural variations.
Yeah, they did this study across 6 countries, and they made sure the measurements were comparable, which is important.
Crucial for cross-cultural work, yeah.
Yeah.
Measurement invariance, they call it.
Right, so they could actually compare levels of this fear, and the ranking was, well, quite revealing.
It was. Turkey came out with the highest levels of fear of happiness.
Highest, okay, then who?
Then the USA, interestingly, followed by Korea, Canada, Poland, and Portugal having the lowest levels among those studied.
USA quite high up there.
Yes.
That's maybe surprising given the cultural emphasis on happiness.
It is, and it suggests there might be conflicting currents within the culture. But the general pattern challenges that simple Western view, doesn't it?
Definitely. Because the source points out that in many non-Western cultures, there's a stronger belief that something bad might happen to punish too much happiness, like that cosmic retribution idea again.
It's more embedded in the cultural narrative, whereas in many Western cultures, the default is often to maximize happiness, minimize sadness.
Yeah, and if someone isn't showing happiness, we often worry, right? Like, what's wrong?
Exactly. It connects to the whole positive psychology movement and the focus on subjective well-being that's so dominant in Western research.
So these findings really make you pause and question if happiness is the ultimate goal for everyone, everywhere.
It forces us to question it. The source suggests that in cultures where worldly happiness is maybe viewed with suspicion, perhaps seen as linked to sin or shallowness or moral decline,
Right.
people might actually report lower life satisfaction even if their objective life circumstances seem pretty good.
Because the culture tells them that too much overt joy is maybe not quite right.
Something like that. There's a cultural script that advises caution about intense positive states. So, comparing Turkey and Portugal in that study, people in Turkey were presumably more likely to agree with statements suggesting happiness could lead to bad luck.
Which has big implications for how we measure well-being globally, doesn't it?
Huge implications.
Hmm.
If people in different cultures have fundamentally different attitudes towards happiness itself, just asking them, how happy are you, might not capture the whole picture.
Yeah, ranking countries based purely on self-reported happiness scores might miss this crucial layer of cultural values about emotion.
It really might.
Huh.
And this ties into a broader concept from emotion research called ideal affect.
Ideal affect,
The-
like the emotions a culture values most.
Exactly. Affect valuation theory talks about this. Some cultures might value high arousal positive states, like excitement and joy, think big celebrations.
Okay.
Others might value low arousal positive states more, like calmness and serenity, think peaceful contemplation.
Right, different ideals for feeling good.
Precisely. An aversion to happiness can be seen as a specific example of this. It reflects a cultural context where intense happiness might not be the ideal affect, perhaps because it's associated with those negative potential outcomes we discussed.
So it's not just if people feel happy, but how they think and feel about feeling happy.
That's the core of it. Is it something to embrace fully or approach with caution? The answer seems to vary significantly.
Okay, so wrapping up this deep dive then, it seems pretty clear that aversion to happiness, this fear, is a real thing.
The complex phenomena.
Driven by these beliefs about bad consequences, maybe shaped by personal history like childhood or attachment.
And strongly influenced by cultural norms and values about emotion itself.
Yeah. And it really underlines that this simple desire for maximum happiness isn't necessarily universal. That whole narrative is much more complicated.
It absolutely is. The pursuit of happiness, as commonly presented, isn't the default setting for everyone.
So this brings us to a final thought, maybe something for you, the listener, to consider.
Yeah, think about your own beliefs. What does happiness mean to you? When you heard us discussing those reasons for fearing it, the cosmic balance, becoming a worse person, fragility, tempting fate,
Did any of that resonate? Even a little bit. Maybe reflect on your own attitude towards joy. Do you embrace it fully? Or is there sometimes a little voice holding you back, worried about what might come next?
it could be quite revealing to just sit with that question for a moment.